I often say that we don't have an innovation problem, we have an ideation problem in the sense that a lot of innovation is couched with great ideas, but innovation takes action.
Because you're bold by choice. Bold by choice.
Well, colleagues and friends, welcome back to the Bold by Choice podcast. I am really pumped today because I've heard a few things in the field. I am talking to school leaders all the time, and there's something very common that they're bringing up, and that is the work has changed. The landscape has shifted. Leadership today requires navigating several things, lots of complexity, rapid change, staffing challenges, students' needs, enrollment changes, community expectations, innovation, et cetera, and constant uncertainty. And this is all happening for school leaders, sometimes within the span of 1 hour. It is so real. And they're talking to us about their needs for how they continue to develop. One thing I love about school leaders is they're like, I want to be a constant learner. I want to continue to grow. But some of these professional development models aren't evolving enough to meet the needs that our school leaders today have and the things that are real for them and what they are facing. And friends, it's reason why we are so excited to bring on my personal friend and both Jim and I's friend and colleague, Dr. Richard Seigler-Carter. We have a new, budding, amazing partnership between the National Charter Schools Institute and the Leveraged Ed Foundation with the Launchpad program. I got to share, I was able to witness the kickoff meeting, and I cannot wait for you all to
It
learn
was a
about
lot
the
of fun.
program. It
A
was
lot
so
of
much
fun.
fun. You even made us take a picture over the Zoom call.
We did. Listen, one of the things they don't train you for, and they should, is how to take a good photograph. And so
That
we
is
did that.
right. That is right. So, Richard, welcome. Thanks for being with us
Thank you.
today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate both you and Jen for having me today.
Well, I don't want to jump in before we give our audience a chance to get to know who you are as a human and as a leader and how you come into the space. So I'd love to have like a human moment and for you to
Sure.
take time to introduce yourself.
Thank you. I am Dr. Richard Seigler-Carter. I live in Orlando, Florida, but I hail from Brooklyn, New York. Once you're a New Yorker, you're always a New Yorker. And I have spent the last 18 years in this crazy field called education. I've held a number of roles. I started my career as a dance teacher of all things. So I come to
Mhm.
education by way of the arts. And I became a kindergarten teacher, then a dean of students, a principal, director of culture and active learning, and then went on to supervise 14 high performing schools in New York City, as well as designing a new teacher training onboarding program for that same institution. As a human, I'm a father, a proud father to two young boys, both of whom
They're so
my husband and I
adorable.
adopted when they were very young. One of my children is on the autism spectrum, so I've had to sort of understand what parents
Hmm.
go through from this side. Right? And it's very different when you're leading a
Hmm.
community of and with families who are navigating resources and advocating for their children. But to
Yeah.
do that as a parent is a very different experience. And so
Hmm.
I'm grateful for that experience. And it does inform a lot of the way that I lead now and the ways in which I have conversations about support and development and training, because
Hmm.
there's no better training than life. And so I do feel that it's an honor, and I've also learned the art of differentiation, right? Because my children are very different people and they require me to be a very different parent for each of them. And so, there's no school that we go to become great parents, to meet needs and teach skills. It's sort of something you have to try at and sometimes fail at every day. And so I do take that same approach when it comes to developing leaders who ultimately support their communities, and children are the beneficiaries.
Richard, I love you shared that with our audience. I was at a charter school eighth grade graduation yesterday.
How was that?
It was because my youngest, Natalie, graduated eighth grade from Renaissance
Congratulations.
Academy. And now it's
Congratulations.
on to the high school, right? And like many charters, This one doesn't have an eighth grade or a high school, right? So she's finishing
Mm-hmm.
this beautiful place, project-based learning, great culture, team, full of the secret sauce of love. And now she's going to the big public district high school because that's our best available option. So my bigger point is this. You started with being a dad. And when you see your own kids and their differences and their needs, and then you start getting into our work of
Mm-hmm.
schools and learning and transformation, but also how to prepare leaders to navigate those systems. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
just a powerful thing. So now I got to slide in and tease you. At the Institute, you're known as the guy that helps people walk down the red carpet.
I know. I feel like I live many versions of a very full life. Part of my persona is also, I love good entertainment. And, I believe that as leaders, we oftentimes come to the work with our professional masks on. And while that is important, the accolades are important. It's also important to show up and just be a fully well-rounded 3D, as I call it,
Mm-hmm.
full color human being. And so I've gotten an opportunity for 2 years in a row to host your red carpet, which has been so much fun,
We love
to
it.
kind of bring the pizzazz and learn a lot about and celebrate the leaders who are also doing a lot of change making work in the field. And so it's been an honor and a lot of fun. So thank you for having me.
That's
We are
right.
so grateful because you have created moments that matter and lots of pictures for people that they prize and treasure.
I
That's
love that.
right. Jim, did you also connect that he started his career in the arts with dancing? And I do believe he was on the dance floor with us at our summit here recently. I just want to like plug that in there too.
Well, like we got to embellish that. He's not just an artist and a dancer, he's an elite
Yes.
artist and dancer. So
Hmm.
you
Thank you.
probably ought to full disclosure, Richard, your background.
Oh yes, I at a very young age, I danced with Britney Spears long ago and other mainstream celebrities, and so. But I think a lot of that informs how I lead. Right, you need insane amounts of discipline and commitment to hear feedback about your practice in real time and have the expectation that something changes immediately without breaking down.
Hmm.
Right, we're not saying that feelings don't matter. We're not saying that one can't be deeply human, but high expectations, opportunities to kind of fail safely and do it again is the expectation. That's the only thing that builds that leadership muscle that we're all after.
Hmm.
And I think the arts really helped me develop that core competency and be comfortable with this idea of failing publicly, right? Because you don't always get it right on the first try, and that's okay. But it's the commitment to excellence and making sure that that is something that you um, are deeply I call it radical acceptance of failure, right?
I
We have
like
to have
that.
that.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of times we lead with our feelings, and though feelings matter, the kids don't
Hmm.
care how we feel in the moment. What they care about is that we're able to create the conditions where they can thrive.
Hmm.
And sometimes that means getting ourselves into the space of discomfort and living there for a while.
Hmm.
Creating the conditions where humans can thrive, students can thrive, learning can thrive. Like that's our theme at the Institute. So I love
Yeah.
how you said that. Now,
Hmm.
just last dad thing, and I'm going to connect this and let Vashaunta take us away. But as the father of 7 and 4 girls, the girls did ballet. If you're going to do ballet, you're going to get correction and feedback continuously.
Every five
Hmm.
seconds.
And if you're going to be resilient, you're going to take that feedback and you're going to get better.
Hmm.
Right.
That's a great skill for life.
It
And
is.
that's part of what we're going to talk about today is how do you prepare leaders for learning organizations of the future?
Hmm.
And you're going to get feedback and you're going to get correction and there are going to be things that go wrong, right? We talk about it not as failing, but how do you learn from that and move forward, right?
Yeah.
Fail forward.
Yeah.
But, I'm a baseball guy, so I don't like to think about it as failure. You just made an error, get the next one. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And a lot of folks are wrestling with a few things, and that's, across the education space. And we talked about these demands on leaders running organizations, running schools, has evolved dramatically. But the development of our leaders hasn't necessarily so. And I've watched you all from a bird's eye view, and I have seen it and heard it and felt it, right? Like you all definitely live the words that you're sharing. What, from your perspective, do leaders need today that maybe they didn't need 15, 20 years ago?
That's a hard question for me to ask because I think honestly, what they need today is what they needed to begin with. And I think we as a sector, no, wait, I can't even say it's a sector. I think school in general has looked the same for years on end. I often say that we don't have an innovation problem, we have an ideation problem in the sense that a lot of
Mm.
innovation is couched with great ideas, but innovation takes action, right? And when things get difficult, do we revert right back to the things that we know has worked for the state of the world in which we are currently in? The truth is, we train for technical skills often, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are a ton of amazing books, lots of theories, and all those theories work. However, we've not necessarily always trained leaders to build their adaptive leadership muscles in a way that allows them to apply what they've learned in different contexts. The way we do school is changing, and what classrooms look like now, who's in front of students, what technology does, what families expect, all of that is currently in motion. But no matter what the model and sort of ultimately becomes, leadership is still what makes it all work. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so, from our perspective, that hasn't changed and won't change. And so, the problem right now is that leadership development was built for a stable model, and the world is no longer stable. And so we have to kind of adapt and reframe how we prepare people, how we immerse people, how we develop and support people in a way that allows them to build core competencies that can withstand whatever changes come. And I think that's the challenge that we're facing right now. So I think one of the ways we do that is training people to navigate ambiguity, right? Making decisions when you don't have complete information and you won't get it, frankly,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think back to the Build by Choice Summit that I had the sort of privilege of presenting at. And the first thing that we did with leaders when they walked into the room was provide them a scenario, one that felt very familiar to them, right? None of us who, all of us who've been school leaders understand that we are making, as you said in your opening, 1,000 decisions a day. And a lot of things can happen oftentimes in the same hour. And so leaders, the first thing that they did to tackle the problem was try to solve it, right? And then when
Mm-hmm.
we introduced another layer of complexity into that, even the most talented leaders who've been doing this work for 30 years felt stuck. What do I do next? And the answer wasn't so obvious. And so
Mm-hmm.
I believe that one of the best ways to really get into the listening of our leaders and to support them in those adaptive skills is to immerse them in high stress, complex scenarios that forces them to think about things that are not so obvious, right? And it's called leadership critical thinking. We teach kids to do that with texts, right? Why can't we do that with scenarios for adults?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Richard, you just dumped such a series of wisdom on us. But I want to back up to something you said to start. The first person you lead is yourself. And we've been teaching people technical skills, but we haven't been giving them the tools where they can be sound and hold themselves. And therefore, right, the old adage, you can't pump water from an empty well. If you, as the leader, aren't sound and whole, you can't lead and give what your team needs.
Exactly.
And so that's such an important component because, to say it in a harsh way, you're talking about training people for leadership. I think a lot of the old stuff was training people to be administrators.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
being an administrator and a leader are night and day,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
different
what was
responsibilities.
interesting is that McKinsey did a survey back in 2023 where they surveyed about 1,500 organizations globally. And they found that the complexity of leadership has increased roughly 35% in 15 years. Not the workload, right? The number of competing priorities, ambiguity of decisions, the speed at which conditions change. And our leaders feel that every day, right? Even more data on top of
Yeah.
that, we talk about education specifically. The Wallace Foundation spent 20 years studying school leadership. And as we know, leadership is one of the most important school level factors in student outcomes. And yet, Rand found that fewer than a third of principals say that their pre-surface training prepared them to to prepare them to actually do the job that they held. And that percentage is lower for superintendents and school managers, right? And 18% of principals leave their schools every year. And in some contexts, that number is higher. And they're all cite the same thing. What I was prepared to do did not match what I needed to do
on a day-to-day basis.
on a day-to-day basis.
And what
It's
I
called
love,
mistaking activity for accomplishment.
Right.
yeah, very much. And so I want to say this, Launchpad, which is a program we're about to get into, is one of the answers to this challenge that we're seeing. And specifically in this case for school leaders. So for our listeners who may not be familiar, what is Launchpad?
Sure. At first, take a 30,000-foot view about who we are as Leverage Ed. So at Leverage Ed, our mission is to invest in the success of education leaders because we believe that they can accelerate the growth of thriving school systems that transform entire communities. And that's why we exist as an organization. And we run a number of programs. One, of course, is we mentioned Launchpad, which really is a year-long intensive that really is meant to empower leaders to build and sustain exceptional schools. And we do that, and our theory of action is we spend about 20% making sure that we are grounding people in a common language and schema so that we understand what we're saying and how we're saying it and how to interpret information. But 80% of it is on the ground, rolling up our sleeves, simulated practice, and really supporting leaders and engaging directly with the problems and the opportunities that exist in their schools, right? We're not interested in the banner. We're not interested in the marketing campaign. We aren't interested in sort of the slogan on the wall. What we're interested in is the leader and he, she, or they's capacity to execute change on the ground. Jim, as you mentioned, our perspective is that leaders need to be able to manage themselves, manage other people, and manage systems. And so we do a lot of that through personalized coaching, simulated practice. I say this all the time. There are many professions out there that you cannot get the keys to the car without mastering simulated practice. Pilots get hours on end of flight simulations. And even when they get the job, they're still doing flight simulations, right? Surgeons, the same thing. And for some reason, school leaders are not required to engage thoughtfully and rigorously in scenario-based practice that really forces them to build their mental models and fail safely before it really counts.
And I think that's a key piece, right? We talk about some of the comparisons with other genres and other fields of work. And I love that you pulled that out. The continued learning often is in continued practice and making sure that we're submerging our brains and our thoughts and our mental muscles, our decision-making muscles. We get this decision fatigue. There's so many to make every day, but what's the practice like in a way that may be a little bit lower stakes? And I love that you all pull that out and pull that forward.
I like saying because it gets people's attention. You don't train a Navy SEAL for a sunny day. Right? You don't need SEALs on a sunny day. What I hear you saying is you're training people to lead school organizations by giving them the toughest stuff and getting them ready for that so that a normal day, a sunny day, seems easy.
Exactly. And not forgetting that at the center of leadership is the person, it's the human. So we first start with a deep understanding of who the leader is themselves. Right? All of us have things that energize us. All of us have things that drain us. And we don't experience ourselves as leaders, but our communities experience us, right? Our parents experience us, our teachers experience us. And so we want to first make sure that our leaders are able to understand what makes them whole and what they're bringing to the work. Number one. Number two, we want to also make sure they understand how to adapt their communication in a way that gets into the listening of the people who they are leading. Because what you intend to do and what people hear are two often different things, right? And then more generally, we are tackling 7 key competencies: performance management, instructional management. Well, I'm going to back up to performance management. Leadership is a performance sport. And I think sometimes we think, Jen, to your point, right? We're not just trying to build amazing educators. I believe that our leaders in our schools didn't get to their seat without having been one, right? But we need to also train on how to manage performance. So instructional management, performance management, systems that make the whole thing run. You got to run systems as well. As much as this is frowned upon, schools are also businesses in some ways. You got to keep the lights on. How do you
Yeah,
manage
right.
the systems that make all of this work? Adaptive implementation, as we mentioned before, the adaptive skills matter. Relational trust and influence. If your community does not trust you, they will not follow you, right? And none of the changes that you espouse to make will mean anything if your community doesn't buy into
Mhm.
who you are, your vision, and your leadership. We also want to make sure that leaders have the capacity to solve system levels problems, right? We like a lot of times people are tackling the symptoms and not the root cause, but do you understand how to diagnose what the root cause is in the first place? And then do you know what to do?
Mhm.
And so we're trying to tackle all of those things, not by going one by one, but the creating the conditions and the scenarios where leaders are forced to exercise and pull on those skills simultaneously.
And it's highly engaging. I remember walking in for a little bit of time at your session during our workshop, and then seeing how you all kicked off with the Launchpad program is very real. And it forces people. I think there was this moment, I don't know if you were at the second layer of complexity or the third, but it was quiet. And so what was happening, right? Everybody was just, I think in their brains, it's like the cartoons where you see the thought bubbles. I bet there were a million thought bubbles in the cloud at that moment. You all introducing the level of complexity, but also like the challenge of that and how to be a decision maker that is able to make a decision that moves outcomes forward for students, given all of the pieces of the puzzle that showed up.
Yeah.
And I've watched how you all work. That is not new to your practice. That is just something that you all do. So let's dive in. When we talk about Launchpad itself,
Sure.
and I'm just going to go from like what I've seen. You have partners, right, that help bring folks into the cohort. Let's start there. How do you all kind of engage with folks? What's that recruitment process look like? Who are you looking for?
Sure. The program is aimed at folks who are sitting principals or those who manage them. And the reason why we're at that level, Vashaunta, is because we certainly want to make sure that whomever is part of this program, that they're able to enact the change immediately, right? We are not interested in just changing people's perspectives. We also want to change people's behaviors, right? And allow them to kind of execute against frameworks that they learn immediately. And we want to make sure also that leaders have a high sense of self-ownership and efficacy. And so our recruitment process is actually a bit more simple than most people might realize. Um, though our program, I should mention, is like we as an organization do not charge for our services. We are pro bono. We get grants to access service, and it's a very intentional model. We don't believe that dollars and cents should be an impediment to access, right? And our partners also have deep relationships in their communities. And so partners understand who may be ready for this, whose schools can kind of withstand this level of intensity right now. And there's a lot of stories to be told and a lot of rich history that partners have with their leaders, especially if you're an authorizer. And so we first start there, right? Are our partners, um, do they believe that this is the kind of work that their leaders need right now? And if
Mhm.
so, we invite them to share our resources with their communities and allow ourselves an option to get in front of those leaders to explain a bit more about what our program entails and why this might be something that they're ready for at this stage in the leadership journey. And if we find that they are, great, let's move on to the next phase. And if we find out that they're not, that's okay, because maybe next year they might be. And so the
Mhm.
first thing is just our partners do the sourcing. We don't do the sourcing, right? We're not interested in selling a product. We're interested in really partnering to make sure that leaders get what they need when they need it. And our partners know
Mhm.
them the best. And so we rely on them to bring forth leaders who may be ready for this experience. Once that happens, we go through an application process. And the application process is meant to better understand the details of your school. Of course, we believe that a school is a reflection of the leader, but the school also has a deep history and a story that we're interested in also learning,
Mhm.
right? And we're not just interested in the data, though that matters. We're interested of the story of the school. What makes the school magical? Where are some areas where the leader's already winning? And where are some areas, frankly, that need a bit more refinement and attention? That's what we want to understand. Because how do we leverage your strengths that you already have and the assets that you bring and use those to support your capacity to make the changes that you wish to make? That's the application process. Then the next step is the interview. We want to know all the things that the application didn't tell us. There's a whole human being in front of us, right? And we're at that same time assessing your level of self-ownership. We're assessing your capacity as it stands in this very moment, not a judgment, of your approach to performance management, your approach to systems management, your approach to instructional management. But because this work is deeply relational, the second part of the interview process is actually a group problems practice, where we are giving them scenarios and we're asking them to work together to think about, why might this be happening? What might this leader do about this? How would this be executed? And the goal there is really just to see, do you lean on the people around you? Because this work is deeply isolating, right? We found that leaders down the street don't even know each other, right? And so one of the benefits of this program is that you now have a group of leaders across the country that you can rely on during the program and after the program ends. And so after that, we accept up to 30 leaders across our partner states right now in cohort 2, which we're very excited that just launched, including Michigan and Ohio, thanks to you all. We have 26 leaders across 8 states. And we're very excited for them to be able to convene together in Atlanta in September.
Absolutely. And a little shameless plug for Jim and I. We're really excited. Our colleagues supported the partnership with leaders in Michigan and Ohio because we have a similar philosophy in all of the states that we work in. Our partners are our friends. You hear me say it every time we open this podcast, colleagues and friends, because we believe that. Most of us have each other's cell phone numbers. We're texting, we call, and we support each other in various ways. And so if you are a Michigan and/or Ohio partner and you're listening to this and you want to learn more, let Jim and I know. We'll get you guys connected. It's a really powerful opportunity.
Richard, we're starting to plan the Bold by Summit number 2.
Already, we're there.
April.
We're there.
And we ought to have the Bold cohort is with Launchpad there and let them share
Their experiences.
what they've been doing and where they're going and recruit some other people to it.
I mean,
sprinkle.
when
winners like to hang around winners because they learn to get better.
They do. At the time that that conference happens in April, this cohort will be just about to end their experience with us. And so it is definitely rightly timed.
Yeah.
Well, they're ending an experience with you, but they're really getting ready to do a launch, right? That's what Launchpad is. You launch them to a more impactful future.
Yep.
That's right.
That is the goal.
Richard, I want to just, I'm going to brag on you for a minute. I think a lot of the courses teach people how to administer. You heard me say that. I also think they're taught by people that maybe read about doing it. You actually have done it.
Yes.
Like you've walked in the shoes. You have been tested by the fire. Tell us a little bit about your own story and how you learned to lead. And I think in some ways it's the story of the old movie Waiting on Superman. You had to be a heroic person to be able to do this. You're now trying to systematize that and create leadership and organizational capacity so that you don't have to just be the hero.
Everyone who works at Leverage Ed has walked the walk and can talk the talk, right? We've all either led school communities ourselves as principals, as superintendents. We've been on the curriculum side of the house. We've been sort of at the home office. We kind of understand the school from a 360 perspective. Some of us sit on boards. I happen to be a board chair. So we want to really we believe that we staff our organization with exceptionally talented people who have done the job. And that's one of the things that allows us to gain trust so quickly is because we understand the lived experiences of the people that we are serving. My story is interesting. I was not traditionally trained as an educator. As I mentioned before, I was a dancer. And I walked into a space where there was a need. I started my educational career in Harlem, in New York. And, by the time I became principal, I opened the doors to my school the day after my 25th birthday. And that is not a journey that's common and typical, though one could argue that, the reputation is that in charter, the leaders may trend younger, and that's fine. What was unique about my story is that the day before school started, almost half my staff quit. My predecessor had since resigned, and she went on to lead another exceptional school community, and a lot of the staff members went with her. And so, talk about on the job training.
Wow.
There's nothing that prepares you to respond to that appropriately beyond fear. I can't say, and maybe I'll deny this later on, but you're in your office, kind of curled up in a ball, crying a little bit, but then you got to act and you ain't got to
I was
lead,
about to say, I
right?
would be flipping out at least for 5
But
minutes.
I would not trade that experience for the world. I think that was one of the first and hardest lessons I had to learn as a school leader. Is you don't figure it out, right? And you have to rely on the talented people who are in your community to help you figure it out. It was not required of me to have all the answers by myself. I had a network of people who kind of wrapped their arms around me to help me get through that process. But that was a scenario that no one prepared for. And we had to find out how to fix that, right? By the end of my tenure as principal, we became a National Blue Ribbon Award school. And what I learned from that experience is there is not one linear route to success. And there are so many different lessons that you learn. There are certainly different people and support systems that you pull on. The challenge as a leader is how do you masterfully construct the scenario and the conditions where those things can happen without you being the person to do it all? You can't do it all,
Woo.
right? You have to
Say that
rely on your
again.
team. It's a lot of calculator risks, I would argue, but it's creating the conditions where the adults, the paid adults, the talented adults can do their jobs, right? And so I learned very quickly that it was not up to me to have all the answers, but it was up to me to facilitate the conditions where the change could happen so people could do their jobs and hold incredibly high expectations and intervene when we realized that either they were not met or people could be pushed and extended further. And while those who I've had the pleasure of working with will often say to me, it's never good enough, and it's not. I think I don't hold a position that because we met 85% proficiency in a state exam, that means we're successful. Because what about the other 15%? That's the kind of
The other
household
15.
I come from. I had a math test, got a 98%. My mother would often say, my very Jamaican mother would often say, where's the other 2%? Right? And as a parent who asked me that question earlier, my eldest would be that 2%, right? What are the expectations for him? And so as I do this work now, as I challenge leaders to think more expansively about what success looks like, both within their context and beyond, it is not simply just a score that's achieved on a state report card. It is their real kids, their real families, their real communities that they have the fortunate pleasure of serving. And we would never tell a community, only 85% of your kids will be successful, and the other 15%, sorry, that would never fly. And so because that would never fly, we still got work to do.
Absolutely.
I love that. It reminds me of Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher, one of the top motivational speakers in the world, Dr. Eric Thomas from Michigan State, go green. But he says you don't run to the finish line, you run through it. Right? That's the mindset of excellence, whether it comes from ballet or education. Excellence has a different look, sound, and a feel to it.
It does. And it should. And it should.
And excellence isn't normal.
Yeah.
And we want it for everybody. So when excellence isn't normal and we want it for everybody, how do we do it?
Yeah, keep on pushing.
Yep.
Get people into lunch.
I will also say too, we also owe it to our leaders we talk about developing the whole child, and that became and is sort of a buzz phrase oftentimes now, right? But we also owe it to our adults to develop them equally, right? They're whole people. And I think a lot of times when you go into training and development, a lot of leaders don't have communities of practice. And I know we're talking about Launchpad right now, but Leverage Ed, some of our other programs are intentionally erected to help leaders form community. We don't want leaders leaving the sector after 3 years. The average lifespan of a superintendent is now, 2.5 years? That shouldn't be, right? But what we hear a lot about is this level of isolation that leaders feel doing their jobs. Leaders, from our perspective, are the least developed people in their buildings. They're worried about everyone else's development, but who's worried about theirs? Where is their community? Where's their tribe?
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to tackle both the hard skills, the adaptive skills, but also getting access to each other. Because when you give people access to other insanely talented people, brilliant things happen.
Strong schools creates, or strong leaders create strong schools, create better learning, right?
That's right.
And if you're a parent and you're bringing your precious child to school, you want them to be with healthy adults.
Yeah,
And healthy adults want to be with healthy leaders.
Yes.
that's right.
And exposure matters too, right? Like one of the reasons why we do
Yeah.
this across multiple
Mhm.
states at once, because the beauty is seeing a leader in Connecticut connect with the leader in Utah, or connect with the leader in Michigan, who's connecting with the leader in Las Vegas. Like all of that matters because the work is similar, even though the context may be different. There's such rich lessons that could happen just from talking to each other.
Mhm.
In our family, we call it, you got to get out of your
You gotta
neighborhood,
get out of your
right?
neighborhood.
So kids start playing basketball, they think they're good. Well, let's go to Flint. Let's
You go
go
to state
Detroit.
champs.
Let's go to Indianapolis, right? And you learn the game is
Yeah.
played at a whole different level, at a whole different speed, and you got work to do. But that's what I would also say about the Bold by Choice Summit. There were experiences to go see schools of different types, different missions, but all exemplars of excellence. And
Yeah.
the more you can get exposed to what excellence looks like and sounds like and feels like, and then you're the healthy person, you can bring those things back and you can make them yours.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I don't want to give away all the tea, but a little bit of a mouche bouche, if you will. So if I'm a leader and I am in cohort 2, let's say,
Yes.
and we just
You
kicked
just
off,
started.
was that last
It
week?
was last week. Last week,
It was
Thursday.
last week.
Yes.
You all shared with them, as some of the state partners and ourselves included, kind of took a back seat, the arc of what they can expect over this next year or this time that
Yes.
they have
Yes.
with you. And so, there's the logistics of that. There's the dates, there's the times, but there's some expectations that go along with it. And so I want to go into like the core components of the experience
Sure.
of cohort members. What have you all designed for your cohorts that are key levers to them achieving this beautiful goal that you just described to us that they have for themselves?
Sure. No pressure, right? We first, again, start with a deep sense of community, right? We want people to be able to trust each other and feel safe to be able to share their thinking and to expose their practice without judgment and without consequence. And so that kickoff call was one of the ways that we start to convene people. If you notice, we didn't really talk a lot about content in that call. It was purely focused on connection. When we
Yes.
convene in person in September, which is the first time that leaders meet in person, we're also continuing that work of community, right? We really want to make sure you know who's in the room, what assets everyone brings to that room first. Then there are some practical things we want to make sure we learn. The goal of our in-person convening is both community and schema building. We really want to make sure that by the time leaders leave us after those 3.5 days, we're speaking the same language. Notice I didn't say that they're more proficient yet at the things we're trying to teach, but are we speaking the same language? We also want to expose them to what their journey might look like in this program. And so we are going to be conducting a live school health assessment at one of our alums' schools. Because part of this program is we don't just convene people either virtually or in person. One of us, as a Leverage Ed team member, goes to your school so that we're supporting you in your leadership in your own context. And a lot of times what happens is a leader may be wondering a bit about what that experience looks like. And so from the convening in September, they then undergo a school health assessment, which someone leaves their home state, one of our team members goes to their school and sort of assesses the health of the school and the leadership health of the person in charge. And the goal is for us to be able to understand the things that the assessments don't show us, right? What are the qualities of the community? What are the things that can't easily be captured in a spreadsheet? And all of those things matter because leaders have goals that they've had before they came into the program. And our goal is to be able to improve the leadership capacity so they can meet the goals they already had, right?
And I love that. Can we just stop there? We talk about this all the time. We have these orgs that have strategic plans or these goals, and they're pretty and they're well written and they're on the website. And then you go back the following year, the same goals exist. 5 years later, the same. And you're like, wait, what was the progress
Right.
toward those goals? And I love that you all start there, because I know that you also end there and that you see that progress. But I just wanted to double down on how important starting there really
Yeah,
is.
we need a baseline. And while leaders are very honest in their self-assessments, we want to make sure that the bar is the bar, right? And we don't want to have a different sort of definition of what that bar is. And so part of us going to the school is to socialize them to what we believe the bar can be.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, so much of your individualized coaching is grounded in what we saw, what you said, and what you're producing, right? Because we have to kind of triangulate that in order for any change to happen. And so leaders after the school health assessment will then undergo several other workshops that are virtual, along with individualized monthly coaching with their coach. And those coaching conversations are real. We're asking to see people's leadership team meetings. We're asking to stress test scenarios before they go in front of their communities for the first time. We are listening to their problems of practice. Where might they be struggling? And how do you overcome those struggles, or what tools might we need in order to tackle those? Then throughout the program, we do a lot of that. And we convene them again for optional sessions, things that, a bit more of an extension to what they've already learned. And then we go back. Because the goal is we need a pre-test and a post-test. Did these interventions actually work? How do we know? But by the end of the program, it is not us assessing their school. They're assessing their own. And we're validating those findings, because ultimately, when we leave, the work should continue without us. And I think that's why we don't call ourselves consultants. We call ourselves the partners, because ultimately, our job is to get you to do the thing that we're able to do without us, right?
That's right.
And so by the end of the program, we expect there to be a noticeable shift in the health of the school, as indicated by several domains that we have in our rubric. And we're expecting the leadership behaviors to match, right? And so we can validate those things by zooming in. We've experimented with giving leaders smart glasses so we can see what's going on in their schools, even if we can't physically be there. The goal is to make sure that we're seeing the same thing, they're responding in similar ways, and they have a sort of a toolkit that's more expansive, so they can respond in different ways should the scenarios present themselves differently. So this kind of all goes back to what I said before. Simulated practice, adaptive leadership skills allows you to respond in the moment based on what's right in front of you. But if leaders never experience that in a rigorous fashion, they won't really know what to do.
And my last big question to kind of round out the experience, and maybe I'll refer to cohort one, what have you all seen as the outcome? So for leaders who have joined you on this journey and come to their next stage, what has happened for them?
Sure. Our leaders have reported higher senses of community, right? They now have access to other people they didn't have access to before. And that is a real resource, because now you can call up your friend down the street whose school you never went to, but you drive past every day. So people have opened their doors for more intervisitations, and that has led to staff kind of learning together from each other and a broader sense of community. I think leaders have felt better prepared to handle the unknowns, right? We have leaders who are like, hey, I did not ever experience this thing, but I just experienced it. And because I understood how to tackle and diagnose the root cause of the problem versus just respond, I was able to respond in a way that's kind of saved my community from X, Y, or Z. You have leaders who are frankly far more self-aware. We've had leaders who have already gotten promotions, right? They're acting executive directors, and now they're given the full keys to the car. You have leaders who have taken on more leadership capacity and responsibilities. And so while that is a great sort of byproduct of the program, it's not the intended goal, but leaders just feel better prepared to understand, to diagnose, and to execute against the things that keep themselves healthy as leaders, but also keep their school communities healthy as well. And we have intentions to do more longitudinal studies just to make sure, like, what is this progress year over year? And how then do we refine and iterate? Because one of the things at Leverage we pride ourselves on is if it's not working, we're going to fix it very quickly. And so we rely on the feedback of our leaders. We rely on kind of following their journeys while they're with us and after they leave, just to make sure that the content, the experience is rightly pitched in a way that they find useful, but also transformative.
Vashaunta, listening to Richard, it's like a master class.
Yeah.
But what's really clear is we can't have excellent schools with exhausted adults and unclear expectations.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we need people to be healthy, and that actually starts below the surface, right? Mindset, beliefs, determine what you're willing to own and take responsibility for. And we know that that's the path to excellence is leaders that take responsibility and make things happen. Richard, to quote you, figure it out. And we can plan and prepare for a lot of stuff, but boy, there's stuff you can't, and you got to figure it out. And that takes some confidence. It takes some resilience. It takes a network. It takes the ability to reach out to other people and say, I need help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to let people in and be part of the team.
Yeah.
And that's what also then builds the sustainability. I link this always back to Jim Collins. What is greatness? Organization that delivers superior performance. They make a distinctive impact and they have lasting endurance beyond any founder or coach or leader. And that's exactly what you're describing. And it's just, it's so needed. And everything we can do to lean in this with you and bring more to it, we want to do.
We will definitely appreciate that. Jim, to your point, I say this all the time, and it's not the most sophisticated of words, but everything is figure outable. The challenge is, right? Everything is figure outable. The question really is, do we have a discipline? Do we have the access to other people, other smart people, other talented people, other hardworking people to figure it out? But the problems that we face as leaders are not insurmountable and they're not infinite. I think that's the thing that we sometimes forget. There are knowns and there are things that can be solved quickly, but there are also things that we don't have the answers for just yet. But if we've done our jobs well, we can rely on the brain trust, rely on the community, but also our communities that we're serving, our kids will be the solution, right? And so that is what kind of gets me out of bed every morning. And that is why programs like Launchpad, but also Leverage Ed as a whole, that's why we exist.
Yeah. And I hope for folks who are maybe like me that came up with training that was different. I'll be honest. When I came up as a leader, the training was you need to be the person who can make the plan. The plan needs to be smart and you need to get people on board to the plan. And I think we can all agree now. We know better. We've seen how that does not work. And now I'm in such a great space and around such thoughtful people where we are using terms like build your coalition, figure out who your network is, engage deeply and engage often, and listen. And I think for leaders, especially those who serve in schools, that is a very that's a pill to swallow. Now, how big or small it is depends on like your training, right? But you have to swallow that pill to realize you becoming a leader didn't mean you go in first place and now you need to execute greatness on your own.
Exactly.
In fact, it means something very different. It actually means you kind of got to get in the back of the line, figure out who all the people in front of you are and how are you going to bolster them up because you get to greatness in community. And that includes your students, that includes your families, that includes your team, that includes a whole host of people. And it's a mindset shift. Jim and I talk about this all the time in different ways. The mindset has to be such that we are humble enough as humans to understand that we will never do anything great by ourselves. And we'll get there faster when we build these coalitions and we make sure that we're surrounding ourselves with folks who can help us along the way.
I couldn't have said it better. Could not have said that better.
Vashaunta, I want to tie this to bold by choice. Because when people hear us say bold, sometimes they think braggadocious, right? Cocky, arrogant. That is not what bold is. Bold is actually humble. Humble enough to know you don't know everything. Humble enough to know you can't do everything by yourself. Humble enough to be able to ask others for help. Humble enough to learn from other people's experience. That's what we're talking about here is being bold by choice. And the other part of bold by choice is that you don't settle. You don't just go along to get along. You're not just managing or administering a school. You are leading an organization that changes lives, creates brighter futures. And you can't settle when that type of responsibility and sacred trust is with you. And so how do you become the best version of you so you can help everybody else thrive and flourish? That's bold by choice.
Yeah, we don't
That's it.
settle for mediocrity. That's never a thing that we're going to do. And I think that takes commitment, because sometimes it's easy. Well, okay, well, I won't win this one, but that's not a mindset that we can afford to take.
That's all right. Well, I feel like, and I know that we can because we've done it many times at conferences. I could talk to you all day. But Richard, one, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your gifts of your experience and what you all are doing. Before we head to close, if folks are interested in connecting with you all, how can they do that?
Sure. We are on LinkedIn, Leverage Ed Foundation, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, also www.leverageedfoundation.org.
All right. Well, we'll make sure that that's in the show notes for all of our listeners out there. We're excited, right? Like there's a lot of great things coming up, but making sure that we are partnering with folks who are helping the community and the ecosystem to grow, I think is high priority on our list. Listeners, thank you all for staying with us, for joining us for this episode of Bold by Choice. And we'll be back next week, same bad time, same bad station. And we're going to be heading into our board governance series. So stay with us. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button. We want to make sure that you're getting notified every time episodes drop, which is every Wednesday morning, and you don't want to miss a beat. All right. Well, until next week, stay bold.